Hey friends, it's Jan from So Often. Today I'm going to show you how to make a reversible pillow cover. Just by turning the pillow cover inside out, you'll have two pillows in one. So let's get started. All supplies are listed in the description below this video. You'll need two fabrics, a ½ yard to 3/4 yard of each fabric, fabric markers, scissors. You'll need something to measure your fabric with, like a yardstick or a quilting ruler. You'll need pins, thread to match your fabric, a sewing machine, pinking shears, a hand sewing needle, and a pillow form. Mine is 18 inches by 18 inches. Cut out the front sides of your pillow cover in both fabrics number 1 and fabric number 2. You need to cut your fabrics the same size as your pillow form. I don't add in seam allowances because I like my pillow covers to fit snugly. Cut 2 back pieces out of fabric number 1 and 2 back pieces out of fabric number 2. To figure the cuts for your back fabric pieces, your width will be the same size as your pillow form, in my case 18 inches, and the length will be the pillow form size plus 6 inches divided by 2, and my cut is 12 inches. So for my pillow cover, I've cut out 2 pieces of fabric for the back out of fabric number 1, and each piece is 18 inches wide by 12 inches long. You're also going to cut out 2 pieces of fabric number 2 for your back, and you'll cut those the same size that you cut your fabric number 1, 18 inches wide by 12 inches long. Place one of the fabric number 1 back pieces right side up on your table, and place one of the fabric number 2 back pieces wrong side up on top of fabric number 1. Your right sides will be together. Pin along one of the long edges, and then you're going to sew the pinned edge using a ½ inch seam allowance. You'll follow the same instructions for your other 2 back pieces of fabric and pin along the long edge, and then sew the seam with a ½ inch seam allowance. Once you've sewn the seam in the back pieces, lay one set of your back pieces on the table, wrong side up, and bring the raw edges together. Next, you'll want to iron the seam. Next, you'll follow these same instructions for your second set of the back fabric pieces. Ironing the seam that you've just sewn. Place the front piece of fabric number 1 on the table with the right side up. Place one of the back pieces with fabric number 1 side down on the front piece, matching up the raw edges along the bottom. Lay the other back piece with fabric number 1 face down on top of the other pieces, matching up raw edges at the top. Lay the front pieces of fabric number 2 face side down on top of the other pieces. Make 2 marks about 6 inches apart on the bottom of the fabric with a fabric marker. This will be the opening to turn your fabrics right side out. Pin all the fabric layers together all the way around the pillow. Don't place any pins where your opening will be. Next, sew all the way around the pillow using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, making sure not to sew between your marks. Start sewing at your first mark, making sure to backstitch so that your seam is secure. After you turn your last corner, sew up to the second mark that you've made, making sure that you backstitch again. Once you're done sewing around your pillow, you should have an opening at the bottom where you didn't sew, and you can see the 4 different layers of your pillow fabrics. Next, clip all 4 corners of your pillow, making sure not to cut into your seam. This will help reduce the bulk in the corners of your pillow. To keep your fabric from fraying and to help reduce bulk in your seams, use pinking shears to trim the pillow seams. Along the bottom edge where the opening is, don't trim as close to the stitch line. This will make it easier to close the seams later. Turn your pillow cover right side out by placing your hand between the 2 top fabrics. They should be fabric number 1. If needed, you can push the corners out with a blunt object, such as that purple thing or a chopstick or the end of a small paintbrush. Turn under the seam opening, pin it, and hand stitch it closed, making sure not to sew the fabric number 2 fabrics in your seam. When you're done hand stitching the seam closed on fabric number 1, turn the pillow cover so that fabric number 2 is on the outside. Pin and hand stitch the opening in fabric number 2 closed, just like you did with fabric number 1. After you've hand sewn fabric number 2 closed, then you can insert your pillow form. I like to fold it in half and then place it inside the envelope opening, making sure that the corners of the pillow form are in the corners of the pillow cover. and then your reversible pillow cover is finished. You'll have one pillow cover with two different fabrics. If you would like more instruction on how to hand stitch the open seams closed, watch this video next.